Well folks, we are finally here. This is the last project that we have in the actual shark shed build. And today we are going to tackle this bad boy right here, which is the ramp. Now, I don't really consider the ramp as part of the structure of the shed, but it is an important part of the shed, and the reason why is because, as you guys know, I have a very large mower in there, which is my reel mower, and it weighs a couple hundred pounds, and I definitely need something that can make things easier for me to get it in and out of there. So this was essential for that build, and I actually thought it was going to be a lot simpler, but there was a little bit of effort involved, and so we're going to tackle that, and we'll come back at the end and we'll talk about everything that we did for this build and for this shed and what we're doing next. So stay tuned. Let's get to it. One of the first things that we had to do was expose the area where we would be building the ramp. I had to move some of the dirt and some of the mulch to expose that area and give me some room to build it. What I'm using are these Simpson strong tie joist hangers, and they're meant for the 2x4s, and that's what we'll be hanging. Had to measure center, and then I also had to figure out where the other ones were going to go, and we'll do that in a minute. But these hangers have these little tabs that you can actually tack in, and it gives you a place to hold it in place while you're figuring out where the rest of them go. I first put in the right side, and I put in the first nail, and then I'm trying to make sure that everything stays nice and plumb and level, and then I can start adding and tacking more of these 2-inch ring shank nails that aren't going to back out on me. At this point, I can go ahead and put in the middle one the rest of the way. I have a little mock-up here of the 2x4 so that I know how big of a space needs to be in, and I can actually make sure that there's plenty of room for that 2x4 to go in. And then I can put in the rest of these nails to actually tack it into place. Next, I'm actually measuring the right side so that I have the left side in the exact same space. I use the tabs to hold it in place, and then I can start tacking the rest of these ring shank nails into place. Next, I go over to the chop saw and I mark off equal distances for these joists, or you can call them hangers or whatever you want to call it, but this is where the deck boards are going to go into place. And I go ahead and just mark everything off so I can get it into the saw and cut it down. Kind of soft put them in place, and then I had to remove some more material so that it can go down into the ground, because the end of the ramp I want it to be almost flush with the ground. So we have to go in there and clean things up, move it around, and make sure that I've got a place where these joists or hangers or whatever you want to call them have a place to sit in. I actually had to remove a lot more dirt and materials than I thought I would have to, and I had to make sure everything was going to be level. Alright, so I've got the angle for it to sit up against the shed so that it's got the right pitch. But now I've got to drop the whole thing down about 3/8 of an inch. So if I want to do 3/8 of an inch down, then I need to bring it to right about here. So I basically need to cut that piece off right there, and that will sit right on that bracket that's over there. So that should do it. But in order to cut that bird's mouth, I'm gonna have to play a little bit. Once I laid out where the bird's mouth was, I had to start the cuts with my chop saw, and then I finished the secondary cut with my circular saw. And then I did the final cut with my Japanese pull saw so that everything would be nice and clean. Could have done this with a jigsaw, but I really like using this Japanese pull saw. And then I just transferred everything to the other boards, the other joists, and did the exact same thing so that everything is nice and even. The purpose of this is so that it fits within that joist hanger and it just stays nice and flush with the top, and the deck boards aren't higher than what the interior space is of the deck. As you can see, that bird's mouth fits perfectly into the joist. I just had to give it a couple little love taps to get it into the right spot. Of course, we're going to use a level, make sure everything stays level on both sides, and then we can do the final tack with the same ring shank nails to get everything into place. And I just added all of the nails to all three of these joists. Now I start cutting down all of my deck boards, and these are just gonna overhang the actual joists by a little bit. And I used 1.5 inch spacing just so that when it rains, it has a little bit of an area for it to go away. Cut off all the ends, cut off everything to the same size so that all the lengths are exactly the same, and then I can take everything over. The next thing I'm doing here is I'm doing square, making sure it stays nice and square between all 3 pieces. And then I temporarily added the very first, or in this case the last, deck board so that I can start at the top and keep everything square as I start all of these deck boards. From here I'm just doing 2 screws per joist, and I just work my way all the way down. Oh, and I also used a screw to put a little bit of a gap between each one of the deck boards. And I did this so that if it rains, or when it rains, the water has a place to go between so it doesn't just run off and create a big puddle at the end of the ramp. Now before I do this last board, I wanted to go ahead and start backfilling each one of these joists, get them into the right and final spot, make sure everything is nice and level, use my level to make sure that everything is in a good spot, tamp everything down and move dirt into place. And at this point, I can take my last deck board and do the final tack and put it in place. A little bit of finish work, mulch around so that it's somewhat flush. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just can't be 5 inches lower than the entrance, which is where we were before we put in this ramp. Well, folks, I hope you guys enjoyed this build of the shark shed. As you guys know, we did a lot of work to get this thing done. There's just a lot of effort that went into place, and it took us several months simply because of weather and supplies and everything else, and it just took a lot longer than I thought it would, and it definitely took a lot longer for me to put the videos together. This ramp was actually completed on October 23rd, and here we are in January when I'm actually getting to put the video together. But this signifies the end of this project and this whole series of projects. One of the things that I am going to come back and do is I'm going to go over the cost. And quite frankly, I thought that this shed was going to cost a lot more than it did, and I'll share with you all those numbers. Keep in mind that we bought most of the lumber for this shed during one of the highest lumber commodity price hikes that there's ever been. And if you were to build this shed today, the lumber price alone would vary somewhere between 10% and up to 50% less than what it was when I built the shed, depending on what lumber it is. Some of the trim pieces were only about 10%, but the pressure treated pieces were definitely a lot cheaper now. So we'll go over some of those things in the next video if you guys are interested in figuring out with me how much it costs for us to build this 9x10 shed. But I couldn't be happier with the end results, and I hope you guys enjoyed the process and enjoyed watching us go through all of this. With that, I hope you guys have a blessed day. If you guys like this video, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and if you want to be notified of future videos, don't forget to hit that bell, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a great week, everybody.